It doesn't happen often, but once in a blue moon, when the stars align and the gods smile upon us, we get action figure perfection. So just a bit of background information, this masterpiece of a figure is an entry for the One Piece Figure World Coliseum King of Sculptors 2025, a competition where a bunch of well-recognized sculptors compete for the crown of King of Sculptors. I wasn't too familiar with this and had no idea Ace was even part of this event until someone pointed it out to me on my Instagram post, but if you collect statues or other non-moving anime figures from companies like Band Presto, you've probably heard of this event before. Anyway, Ace falls in the under 10,000 yen category and was sculpted and developed by a couple of well-known sculptors. There's an interview with both sculptors online up on the Premium Bandai Japan website. If you want to check it out, just Google Translate the page and you're pretty much good to go. But it does go into detail about the conceptualization and process of producing this magnificent one piece of plastic. I'll have the links in the description if you guys are interested. So enough about the history, let's take a look at probably one of the best releases to ever come out of the S.H.Figuarts line, S.H.Figuarts Portgas.D.Ace Fire Fist. First up, let's take a look at Ace without all of his gear, and he comes with a ton of gear. But looking at his base figure itself, you get your tall, muscular, lean frame, very fitting of Ace. None of the upper body is painted, but that's okay. It's a nice flat matte skin tone plastic. You have his Ace tattoo on the left side of his arm, S crossed out of course, as well as his white beard tattoo printed very nicely on the back as well. Ace's B necklace is a soft rubbery plastic that's attached to the back of Ace's neck. His red and white bracelet is a separate floating piece, so be careful not to lose it when you're swapping out hands. His log pose compass is also a removal piece, so again, do be careful not to drop it, which I did multiple times. It's a tiny clear plastic piece, so trying to find it on your floor is definitely not fun. Ace's dagger with his green sheath also just plugs onto the side of his waist there, so it does swivel back and forth, and yes, you can remove it. You get your iconic black shorts, which are made from a soft rubbery plastic, great for those crouching poses, and the boots are nicely sculpted as well, all the way to the soles of his feet. You do get a really good forward ab crunch with Ace, but the white beard tattoo on his back is painted in all the way, so it doesn't really break up the design. Alright, so here is Ace in his full alabaster outfit, long black red flamed coat with white trimming, and I think Tamashii did a pretty good job. The flames are nice and clean, no bleed, and the stitching isn't too bad either. They've matched the colors pretty well here. You get your bendy wire running through the inside of your coat, so you can pose it around, and I think the material they use makes for a pretty decent drape. Not too thick, not too thin. Ace's scarf is pretty simple, just some white fabric with some bendy wires running through it, and while it's not the most complicated accessory in the set, it works well and does the job. Again, you can remove both his scarf and coat to give Ace probably his most iconic look, shirtless with his orange hat. The straps on his hat are a soft rubbery plastic which pops onto an extra hairpiece that you can use with all the faceplates. The hat is removable, which is great, and you can see how the straps actually connect to the head sculpt, but I do wish there was an option where you can have Ace hang his hat on his back. But I guess he's wearing his hat most of the time anyway until he lost it, so I guess that's okay. For faces, we get 5 options for both his hat and without. You get your classic Ace smirk, an all pearly white smile, a teeth grit and shouting option for all your fire fist fighting poses, and a sleeping faceplate for, well, snoozing. You get your signature Ace freckles for each expression, and they're all nicely printed. Alright guys, so let's take a look at the articulation, starting off with Ace's head. He looks up pretty good. Looks down just as well. We get left and right tilt, and we also have side to side rotation as well, and a lot of this head movement is because of this really free moving neck joint. At first I thought like the neck was a little bit thick, maybe it sat a little bit too low, but actually no, I think it's pretty good, especially when you have him in like action poses. It's pretty well proportioned. So yeah, head articulation is great. So I love these shoulders. This isn't actually anything new. Luffy actually
has very similar shoulders where you don't see the joint. There is a shoulder joint in there, and it's very similar to a Revoltech joint, but they've hidden it within his shoulders here. It's, I guess you could say it's kind of like a shell, and it kind of like caps off and makes his arms look seamless, jointless. So, you know, when you pose him, you know, in action poses, whether it's like up or going back or having his arms forward, which he can bring his arms forward really, really well. Look at that. Crosses his arms right in front of his chest, which is fantastic. You know, you don't see the joint, or it's really minimal. I mean, you can see a little bit at the back here, but they've covered it really, really well. It looks like it's part of the musculature, and it's really, really well engineered. I wish Revoltech would, you know, do something similar to what Figuarts is doing for their one-piece figures, but really well designed. You can get Ace to move his arms 90 degrees. And again, I mean, there's a tiny bit of a gap there, but his butterfly joint there is really well integrated into his shoulder and into his, like, the back, into his chest there, which is great. You get 360 rotation. And unlike Revoltech joints, it's not that weird, I guess, you know, when you rotate Revoltech joints at the shoulder, you kind of have to like bend it or like twist it in a way that's not traditional to how you would a standard like ball joint for normal 6-inch action figures. This is pretty standard stuff, so it's pretty effortless. You do have your bicep swivel here. Like I said, with the butterfly joints, he does bring his arms in pretty far forward and pretty far back as well, which is great. Sorry, getting distracted there. Yeah, bicep swivel, great. It does break up the Ace tattoo on his left arm, but hey, that's all right. You get a double joint elbow, which is fantastic. Double jointed elbows. Look at that range. And you do have a hinge and swivels there for the hands as well. Great stuff. With this ab articulation, you get the upper diaphragm ball joint, but you also get, I guess, like the traditional crunch, but you also have a ball joint at the waist as well. So, oops, there goes the knife, which is plugged in on a peg, so it does swivel up and down. But like I was saying, you do get a lot of good range there in the torso. So you've got your torso, your upper torso going forward, you've got your ab crunch going forward, and then you've got that waist joint. Just look at that. He crunches over really, really well. And at the back there, you have, you know, his tattoo, the Whitebeard tattoo, right at the back there, and it doesn't break it up. You know, it's painted all the way in. Looks good. Obviously, you know, when you do a little bit of swiveling there at the upper torso, it does, you know, break up the tattoo a little bit, but I mean, it's nothing major and it still looks great. We have some really good side-to-side tilt, again with the lower waist there. Fantastic stuff. And you do get a little bit of waist swivel. It's not great. I think that's probably the most limiting part of Ace, which is his side-to-side swivel. You do get a bit of it at the upper torso as well, so that does help, you know, for those walking poses, I guess. But everything else is just fantastic. Look at that. The crotch here is a hard plastic, but the actual shorts, they are softer rubber, which is great. Meaning, like I thought, because I guess we didn't get a good look in the promo shots of how his shorts looked like, but I thought they were the same. They had the same engineering as Romance Dawn Luffy, where you have like the back section here, like shutters, but because it is rubber, he can bend his feet all the way up and it doesn't get in the way, which is fantastic. I guess, Order likes his characters having like knee length shorts for some reason. Anyway, you get a good spread there going out. Ace kicks back and forward 180. Fantastic range. You do get an upper thigh cut, or a thigh cut, sorry, which is great as well. And they do swivel here where it transitions from the shorts to the lower legs as well. So you do get that bit of articulation, which is great. Very much like, I guess, Naruto figures. And you do get a boost swivel. So even more articulation. The boots, they go down really, really well. Go up a bunch. You get that huge toe hinge there. And you get some fantastic, look at that ankle pivot. So, I mean, you really can't get better than this. I mean, other than, I guess, the somewhat limited swivel there at the waist, everything else is phenomenal. He looks good. He articulates fantastically. There's not much more you can really ask for in an action figure. So I'm really happy with this, and he is a ton of fun to pose around. I mean, even without all of his accessories, if you just had the figure, if I just had Ace on his own like this, I would still enjoy it just as much. But given that you do have the flame effects, you got the hat, you've got his, his coat, his scarf, it just makes everything so much more fun. Absolutely love posing this figure around. Top stuff.
Alright guys, strap yourself in because we're about to run through the slew of accessories Ace comes with. First up are your standard fists. We get a left Kagero hand with the tips of his fingers being an almost translucent orange for the flames. A pair of fire gun hands for his Higan attack. A set of Jujika hands for his iconic crossfire attack. Next up we have Ace's watermelon pattern backpack, which really just hangs over his shoulder. Well sculpted, well painted, soft rubbery strap. Nothing or too much to say here. But in addition to that, we also get some flame effects. First we have his flame fist, again translucent yellow to orange plastic, molded in a flamed fist that pops onto Ace's right wrist joint. We also get a flame effect that goes over his arm, either one, and it's as simple as just popping off your hands and sliding it onto your arm of choice. And lastly, we get a flame trail much like the fire fist, which pops onto either one of his wrist joints and has two optional attachments, a long flame and a short flame. They pop onto the base flame via ball joints, so you do get a bit of swivel and movement from both. I mean, I wouldn't expect anything less for an Ace release to come with flame effects, but what Tamashii have given us with the flame effects, the hands, and the coat are really exceptional. And yes, you can also use Tamashii's flame effect as well if you wanted to. The flame effects set is a little bit more translucent than the ones that we get with this release, but they definitely work. And keeping in tradition with Figuarts, there's also an extra faceplate there for Romance Dawn Luffy. I mean, I hate to be spoiled so much so early into the year because everything that comes after Ace is just going to have a hard time living up to this masterpiece of a release. And I know being a competition entry, it probably did get resources maybe a normal release wouldn't, but this really does set a high benchmark for any and all future S.H.Figuarts One Piece releases. Tamashii threw everything at this release. The sculpt, the engineering, the articulation, the bountiful accessories. It really does have everything you'd want for an Ace figure. You guys know I know nothing about One Piece, but I find myself loving this figure more than, I guess, most of my Dragon Ball figures in my collection. It really is something I think for any lover of action figures should get the chance to experience. I mean, whether or not it'll still be available now that it's out is another question. And as far as how it'll do in the World Coliseum figure contest, if it doesn't take first place, I think it'll still hold a high spot in many people's collections as one of the best S.H.Figuarts to ever be released. And that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed the review, the first official review actually for this year. I do have to apologize for my nasally voice. I've been trying to fight a cold for the past couple of days, so thanks for bearing with me. I'll have my review on Pain coming up very soon, as well as GT Pan before I head over to the States for February, which means I probably won't have many reviews out next month, but I will still try and put out content in some shape or form. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Hope to see you all back for the next one. Remember to do your push-ups, and as always,
よろしく